I was a top-tier surgeon, but my two-faced mentee used a system to steal my skills. By replicating the surgical plans in my head, my mentee became a miracle doctor, while I was reduced to a shadow. Together, he and my girlfriend framed me for medical malpractice, and a gangster I'd operated on had me beaten to death in an alley. When I woke up, reborn, I immediately quit my job and broke up with my fiancée. I went back to my hometown to become a country vet. Now, during the hospital's grand rounds, my mentee's head is filled with images of me delivering a piglet. During his next major surgery, the system takes over, and he ends up castrating the patient like a prize hog. As my mentee and my ex-fiancée are both dragged off to prison, I smile and turn on my live stream. All right, folks, what did you think of my gelding technique today? Any improvement? 1. I died in a cold, damp alley, discarded like a bag of trash. The last things I knew were fists, steel-toed boots, and the distorted face of a thug, his breath a toxic mix of cheap cigarettes and my own blood. In a moment my soul was ripped from my body, I finally saw the truth. Caleb Vance, my mentee, standing beside my fiancée, Amelia Reed, with that disarmingly earnest smile on his face. Inside his head, the damned prodigy surgeon system was greedily, mercilessly siphoning the last of my knowledge on microsuturing and vascular anastomosis. My only value, it turned out, was to be slowly and completely drained dry. A tidal wave of resentment, cold and venomous, flooded my fading consciousness. My mind snapped back from a thick, syrupy darkness like a drowning man breaking the surface. Harsh fluorescent lights stabbed at my eyes, and the familiar, sterile smell of antiseptic violently filled my lungs. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic, muffled drumbeat. This was the surgical locker room at the hospital. I turned my head, my neck stiff, and my eyes locked on the digital calendar on the wall. The date, sharp and searing, burned itself onto my retinas. 3 months ago, the exact day that two-faced parasite, Caleb, had first set foot in the surgical department, introduced by Amelia. The day that damned system had latched onto my brain like a leech. An arctic chill seized me. I stumbled to the sink, twisted the faucet, and threw handfuls of ice-cold water on my face. It streamed down my cheeks, darkening the white porcelain below. The face in the mirror was pale and young, the corners of my eyes not yet etched with the exhaustion and despair that were come. But my eyes, the terror, the bone-deep hatred, and the wild, frantic spark of a man who had clawed his way back from the grave. That wasn't the me of this timeline. Fragments of my past life exploded in my mind. Caleb, flawlessly executing my surgical plans in the OR, earning thunderous applause. Amelia, her eyes shining with an admiration for him that eventually curdled into disappointment and criticism of my decline. The surgical sponge deliberately left inside the gangster's abdomen. The cold, sterile termination letter in the hospital corridor. Amelia, on Caleb's arm, giving me one last look of pity and finality. The muffled thud of fists in the alley, the sickening crack of bone, and just before darkness consumed me, the cold, clinical notification from deep within Caleb's mind. Host knowledge transfer 100% complete. Permanent binding successful. Huh. I gasped for air, digging my nails into my palms, the sharp pain a desperate anchor against the roaring impulse to destroy them both. Not now. You can't lose it now. Whatever divine fluke had given me a second chance, it wasn't so I could charge out there like a hysterical failure and demand answers. Just then, the locker room door swung open. It was Amelia, her white coat perfectly fitted, her long hair pulled back to reveal the graceful line of her neck. She wore that gentle smile I knew so well, a smile that now made my stomach clench. "Lucas, what are you spacing out for? Get changed. The new resident, Caleb, is observing today. The chief specifically assigned him to your gastrectomy. You need to show him the ropes." She walked toward me, reaching out to straighten my collar with an air of practiced intimacy. "It hasn't been easy for him, you know. He transferred from a fine arts program. His fundamentals are weak, but he's incredibly driven. Be a good mentor." Her fingers, with their familiar cool touch, brushed against my skin. I recoiled as if bitten by a snake. The movement was so abrupt that her smile froze, a flicker of confusion and hurt in her eyes. Lucas, she asked, her voice cautious. Those were the hands that, in my past life, had worked in concert with Caleb's guidance to leave that fatal sponge behind. This was the gentle face that had looked down at the floor during the malpractice hearing, her silence a damning confirmation of every accusation against me. A wave of cold hatred and profound nausea churned in my gut. I fought it down, using every ounce of willpower to keep from vomiting. Not here, not now. I avoided her gaze, my voice a dry rasp forced from a frozen throat. Got it. I practically shoved past her, striding my locker, my knuckles white from clenching my fists. Pushing through the heavy, airtight doors of the operating room, the sterile scent hit me full force, mixed with the cold tang of metal instruments. The surgical lights were already on, casting a harsh, shadowless glare on the operating table. Nurses moved with quiet efficiency, their instruments clinking softly. The anesthesiologist murmured to the circulating nurse, confirming the patient's vitals. Caleb was already scrubbed in, wearing a mask and cap, leaving only his eyes visible. Those eyes were currently fixed on the floor in a perfect imitation of humility, radiating just the right amount of nervous energy and eagerness to learn. He was standing in the first assistant spot. Seeing me, he gave a slight bow, his posture radiating deference. His voice, muffled by the mask, had a deliberate, gentle warmth. Dr. Thorne, sorry to bother you. This is my first time in a major surgery like this. I'm worried I won't be able to keep up, or that I'll slow you down. If I do anything wrong, please don't hesitate to tear into me. What a flawless performance. What a pathetic, sycophantic little worm. The me of the past had been completely fooled by this harmless, hard-working act. I walked directly to the head of the table, ignoring him and his display of self-deprecation. My gaze swept over the steady waveforms on the anesthesia monitor, then settled on the sterile drapes covering the patient's abdomen. The entire roadmap for the gastrectomy, the dissection planes, the lymph node clearance, the anastomotic techniques materialized in my mind with crystalline clarity. Let's begin, I said. My voice was unervingly calm, betraying nothing. The scalpel descended, its number 10 blade parting the skin with clean precision. The faint sizzle of the electrocautery pen was the only sound in the focused silence. My movements were fast, precise, and steady, each step executed with textbook accuracy and a kind of cold, mechanical efficiency. The experience of my past life, combined with the absolute clarity of my rebirth, made my technique even more fluid than it had been at my peak. Metzenbaums, DeBakey's, suction. The commands came one after another. I controlled the room's tempo, keeping it fast-paced but orderly. I could feel Caleb standing just a step behind me, a silent phantom. And I could feel it, an invisible, voracious presence locked onto my brain. It was scanning, copying a high-speed Xerox machine, stealing every thought, every prediction, every minute adjustment I made. Just as I thought, the damned system was already at work, beginning its shameless plunder from the moment it latched on. In my past life, I'd been clueless, assuming Caleb was just a prodigy with a terrifyingly fast learning curve. A cold smirk formed in my mind. Go ahead, steal. Take all the experience I bled for and use it as your ladder to the top. Except this time, the top of that ladder isn't glory. It's a custom-built hell just for you. The surgery proceeded smoothly. The stomach was mobilized, and I needed to deal with a particularly tortuous artery. The thought had barely formed in my mind. Use the right-angle clamp to carefully dissect, ligate proximally and distally, then divide. Almost simultaneously, Caleb moved. As if predicting my every intention, he smoothly and helpfully placed a spare right-angle clamp right where my hand was about to move. The timing was so perfect it was chilling. Dr. Thorne, did you need this? His masked voice was laced with the perfect amount of humble insight. I didn't take it. I didn't even look at it. My hand changed its trajectory mid-air, seamlessly reaching for the instrument tray myself and picking up a curved dissector that felt better in my hand. The motion was fluid, without a hint of hesitation, as if his gesture and his question had never happened. Caleb's hand, holding the now redundant clamp, froze in mid-air. Through his mask and cap, I saw the unmistakable flash of shock and confusion in his eyes. It was a look that screamed, wait, the system told me he was going to use a right-angle clamp. Why did he change his mind? A tiny ripple of dissonance disturbed the calm in his eyes. It was the bewilderment of the system's feedback clashing with observed reality. Good. I kept my focus on the surgical field, the curved dissector in my hand deftly maneuvering around the vessel. My voice was steady as I gave the next command, 4-0 silk tie. The scrub nurse immediately slapped a needle holder into my waiting palm. I tied off the vessel and divided it. The entire sequence was seamless, completely bypassing his predicted step. The operation continued. Every time Caleb tried to anticipate my next move based on the stolen data from my brain, offering an instrument, preparing for a maneuver, even verbalizing a need before I did, I would pivot, changing my strategy in a way that was completely natural and surgically sound. Sometimes I'd switch to a different, more suitable instrument. Sometimes I'd alter the sequence of the dissection. Sometimes I'd employ a more elegant, albeit more technically demanding, technique. Every single pivot left Caleb's offered instrument hanging uselessly in the air or his helpful comment stuck in his throat, making him look awkward and superfluous. He was a puppet whose strings I held, but his master, the system, kept feeding him the wrong script. The confusion in his eyes deepened. Beads of sweat dotted his brow, glistening under the surgical lights. His carefully constructed mask of humility was beginning to crack, replaced by a frustrated shame and a rising panic at his inability to control the situation. He even took a small, unconscious step back, as if trying to distance himself from me, the unstable variable. The surgery ended with the final subcutaneous stitch. I dropped my instruments, stripped off my bloody gloves, and tossed them into the biohazard bin with a dull thud. Without a single glance at Caleb, and ignoring the questioning, slightly annoyed look from Amelia, who had clearly noticed Caleb's awkwardness, I walked straight to the locker room. Once again, I let the cold tap water run over my face and arms, trying to wash away the metallic scent of the ore and the simmering rage in my soul. In a mirror, my eyes were as cold as steel. Enough. This whole farce was over. This glittering stage of betrayal, scheming, and theft, I was done with it. I wouldn't spend another minute here. Back in my office, I didn't hesitate. I opened my laptop, pulled up a document I'd prepared long ago in another life. A clean, simple letter of resignation, and hit print, with the quiet hum of the printer as my soundtrack. I picked up a pen and signed my name at the bottom. The ink bled slightly into the paper, a final, decisive act of severance. Resignation in hand, I headed for the chief of surgery's office. I ran into Amelia in the hallway. Her face was a mask of concern, tinged with an annoyance she couldn't quite hide. Lucas, about this surgery. Did Caleb do something to upset you? I saw him. I stopped and looked at her. This face, which I had once loved, which I had wanted to see for the rest of my life, now felt like a stranger's. The image of her standing with Caleb, united against me, was burned into my memory. Amelia. I cut her off, my voice as flat and emotionless as a frozen lake. We're done. The color drained from her face. Her expression fractured like fine china. What? Lucas, what are you talking about? Is this because of Caleb today? It has nothing to do with him, I said, my tone absolute. I just realized we're not on the same path. This is where it ends. I didn't wait to see the tears that I knew were welling in her eyes. In my past life, those tears could melt my resolve. Now they just seemed cheap. I walked around her frozen form without a backward glance and knocked on the chief's door. Inside, I placed the letter on the wide mahogany desk, sliding it in front of the startled chief of surgery. Dr. Albright, thank you for everything, I said, my voice calm but unyielding. I'm resigning. The chief was clearly floored by the 1-2 punch of our breakup and my resignation. He picked up the letter, looked at me, then back at the letter, searching my face for any sign that this was a joke or a heat-of-the-moment decision. Thorne, what the hell is this? You're the cornerstone of this department. Is the pressure getting to you? The board is about to review your promotion too. It's not the pressure, I interrupted again, my gaze steady. I've just found a different path. My mind is made up. Please accept my resignation. I'll complete all the necessary handover procedures. Without giving him a chance to argue, I gave a slight nod, turned, and left the office, leaving him staring, dumbfounded, at the single sheet of paper in his hand. The moment I stepped out of the hospital's main entrance, the midday sun was blinding. I squinted at the towering, sterile building. All my past life's glory, struggles, pain, and ultimate destruction were buried within those walls. And in that moment, I felt a profound sense of release, as if a mountain had been lifted from my shoulders. The city air was thick and loud. I pulled out my phone and, without a moment's hesitation, found a contact labeled Uncle Jack. The call connected, and a booming voice, thick with an Appalachian accent, crackled through the speaker. "Well, hey there, son. What's got you calling your old uncle on a work day?" "Uncle Jack." I took a deep breath, my voice calm and settled. "I quit. I'm sick of the hospital. You mentioned a while back that the vet clinic in Red Creek was short-staffed, that you were run off your feet. You still looking for an apprentice?" The line went silent for a few seconds, the shock palpable even over the phone. Then his voice came back, twice as loud, threatening to blow out my eardrum. "What? You quit? To be a vet's apprentice? Lucas Thorne, our family scraped and prayed to God to get you through medical school. You're the Thorne family's pride. Did it damn you'll kick you in the head?" I could picture him pacing and waving his arms, and a small smile touched my lips, the first genuine one in what felt like an eternity. The gloom that had settled over my soul seemed to lift just a little. "Uncle Jack, I'm done being a doctor for people. I want a different life. A quieter one. Patching up livestock seems like a good start. So, are you hiring or not?" Another pause, followed by a long, heavy sigh laced with frustration and a hint of concern. "Lord have mercy. You always were a stubborn mule." Fine. You're a grown man. I can't tell you what to do. If you can really stomach the dirt and the smell, you get your butt back here tomorrow. Old man Hemlock's prize cow has been in labor all day, and he's about to have a conniption. You could try your hand at that." "Good. I'll be there tomorrow." I hung up, took one last look at the massive white building behind me, and then turned away without a shred of regret, melting into the river of people on the street. My steps felt lighter and faster, as if I were shedding the skin of my past. The sun broke through the clouds, warming my back. The road ahead led to dusty country lanes, to the lowing of cattle and the bleating of sheep, to a new world free of betrayal and stolen legacies. It was a world of simple, honest work. That was where my new life would begin. "Caleb, Amelia, you can have your gilded cage and your ridiculous system. I'm not playing this game anymore." The smell of the Red Creek Veterinary Clinic was a universe away from the sterile scent of Metropolitan General. It was a potent, living cocktail of damp earth, fermenting hay, animal musk, and a dozen different chemicals, all blended into an olfactory assault that announced a completely different set of rules. My uncle, Jack Thorne, was the clinic's owner and sole veterinarian. He was a wiry, sun-beaten man with a short temper and a voice that could startle a sleeping bear. Chewing on the stem of an unlit pipe, he looked me up and down, my clean slacks and button-down shirt completely out of place, and snorted. "Well, look at you. City boy, you sure you got the stomach for this?" I didn't say a word. I just took off my jacket, rolled up my sleeves, and got to work. A hint of approval flickered in his eyes. He tapped the pipe against the heel of his boot. "All right, you got the thorn grit. I'll give you that. Let's go. Hemlock's prize heifer is waiting on her miracle." My first time in a proper barn was an assault on the senses. It was hot, humid, and the ammonia stung my eyes. A massive Hereford cow lay on her side in the hay-strewn dirt, her flanks heaving as she let out a low, agonized moo. A mess of mucus and blood pooled behind her. The owner, Mr. Hemlock, a farmer with a face like a road map of West Virginia, was practically dancing with anxiety. "Jack, Doc, thank God you're here. It's Big Bertha. Been like this since sunup. We can see a hoof, but she's stuck. She's just stuck." Uncle Jack knelt, his examination swift and practiced. His brow furrowed. "Damn, breech presentation. One leg's folded back and caught, and the cord's wrapped around the neck. Can't just pull. We got to get that leg straightened out first." He looked up at me, his eyes sharp. "You up for this, son? This ain't surgery. It's wrestling. Takes guts and a gentle hand." The hands that had once held delicate surgical instruments now reached, without hesitation, into the warm, slick birth canal. There were no sterile gloves, just a thick pair of rubber ones that went up to my shoulder. The sensation was hot, slippery, and intensely vital. I forced aside the city surgeon's squeamishness, focusing all my concentration on the feedback from my fingertips. My deep knowledge of human anatomy, cross-referenced with the veterinary textbooks I'd been cramming, created a clear picture in my mind. Mr. Hemlock, hold her head steady. Don't let her thrash. I commanded, my voice calm and steady in the chaotic barn. Hemlock rushed to the cow's head while Uncle Jack prepared a set of calving chains and antiseptic. My fingers navigated the narrow passage, feeling for the sharp edge of the hoof, mapping the terrain. I found it, the bent joint of the trapped foreleg. I could feel the position of the calf's neck, the tightness of the umbilical cord. The fine motor skills honed over thousands of hours of dissecting delicate nerves and vessels translated perfectly to this new, cramped environment. My fingers moved with an instinctive grace, gently but firmly pushing, rotating, and maneuvering the trapped limb, all while carefully slipping the cord from around the calf's neck. Chains! I grunted. Uncle Jack was right there, slapping the sterilized chains into my hand. I managed to loop them around the now straightened foreleg, securing the knot. All right, Mr. Hemlock, on my count. Pull steady. My voice projected an authority that cut through the panic. 1, 2, 3. Pull. Hemlock's face turned purple with effort as we pulled in unison. The chains went taut. The mother cow let out a deafening bellow, her body convulsing. Uncle Jack threw his weight against her hindquarters to keep her steady. There was a moment of intense resistance, and then, suddenly, it gave way. He's out. Uncle Jack shouted in triumph. A wet, slick calf, still shrouded in the amniotic sac, slid out onto the hay. It lay there, limp and motionless. Hemlock's joy evaporated, replaced by terror. He ain't breathing. Uncle Jack, a man of action, immediately tore the sack away from the calf's nose and mouth, scooped out the mucus with his bare fingers, grabbed the calf by its hind legs, and hoisted it upside down, giving its back a few solid thwacks. Sputter. Cough, cough. The little creature shuddered, expelled a lungful of fluid, and then let out a weak but distinct moo. It was the most beautiful sound in the world. Hemlock's legs gave out, and he nearly collapsed, tears streaming down his weathered face. He's alive. He's alive. Jack, Doc, you're saviors, that's what you are. Uncle Jack lowered the calf next to its mother. Big Bertha, exhausted but driven by instinct, twisted her head and began to lick her baby clean with long, rough strokes of her tongue, murmuring soft, deep sounds. The calf, trembling, made a wobbly attempt to stand, fell, and then snuggled against its mother's warm side, instinctively searching for milk. In that moment, the barn, with all its smells of manure, sweat, and earth, felt like the most sacred cathedral. There were no complex hospital politics, no multi-million-dollar machines, just the raw, unvarnished miracle of life. Sweat dripped from my brow, mingling with grime and who knows what else. I was filthy, exhausted, and happier than I had been in years. Uncle Jack clapped me hard on the shoulder, nearly knocking me over. His eyes were filled with a gruff, undisguised pride. Hot damn, boy, you got the gift. Steady hands and a steady nerve. Better in, I was at your age. I wiped my face with the back of my grimy arm, watching the wobbly new life nuzzling its mother, and broke into a wide, genuine grin. Life at the clinic unfolded at the rhythm of the seasons, dictated by mud, sweat, and livestock. The facilities were primitive. A single cinder block building served as an office, pharmacy, and exam room. A lean-to out back was the recovery ward. Our sterilizer was a giant pot of boiling water on a propane burner. The contrast with my old life was a constant shock to the system. Suturing a pig's gash after a fight required a thick, triangular needle and heavy-duty gut suture. The stitches had to be tough enough to withstand a mud wallow. Injecting a bull with antibiotics required a needle the size of a nail and the arm strength to push through muscle as thick as a tire. And the drug dosages were staggering. The amount of tranquilizer needed for a horse would be catastrophic for a human. At night, exhausted, I'd pore over my copy of the Merck Veterinary Manual, studying the dosages and contraindications for animal-specific drugs. The stark differences between animal and human medicine were a constant, jarring reminder of my past. And with that reminder came a secret, cold thrill. Caleb, your system loves to learn, doesn't it? Well, class is in session. Enjoy this crash course in cross-species medicine. For Metropolitan General Hospital, Chicago, the surgical department's main conference room. The air was thick with tension. The hospital's top brass, the CEO, VPs, department chiefs, and senior surgeons, were gathered around a long, polished table. On the large screen at the front of the room was a 3D CT scan of a human liver, showing a tumor in a treacherously difficult location, wrapped around major blood vessels and bile ducts. The CEO, a man with a permanently grim expression, tapped the table. You all know the situation. The patient is high profile. There is zero room for error. What's our plan? A senior professor, a legend in his field, adjusted his glasses. The location is extremely challenging. The standard approach is too risky. I'd recommend transarterial chemoembolization to shrink the tumor first. It's slower but safer. The patient can't wait, and the results are uncertain. Dr. Miller, the head of hepatobiliary surgery, shot back. We need to go in. A modified right hepatectomy, if we can find a window to bypass this variant hepatic artery. The debate raged, a storm of medical jargon and competing egos. Caleb Vance sat near the back, his palms sweating. He was having a terrible day. From the moment he'd woken up, his mind had been a chaotic mess of veterinary information. 1 second, he was reliving the case of a sow with postpartum fever from the night before. The next, he was calculating the correct dosage of dewormer for a lamb. The next, he was mentally reviewing the proper technique for castrating a boar. Images, smells, and treatment plans for livestock flickered through his brain like a corrupted slideshow, crowding out the human medical knowledge he desperately needed. He tried to focus on the CT scan to trace the vascular anatomy. But as soon as he did, his mind was hijacked by another image. A cow in the throes of a difficult birth, a single, twisted calf leg protruding, and the steady, slime-covered hands of Lucas Thorne. Damn it, not again! Caleb squeezed his eyes shut, digging his nails into his leg to fight back the mental invasion. He tried to recall videos of complex liver surgeries he'd studied, but the system seemed to be actively working against him, pushing a notification into his consciousness. Target subject, Lucas Thorne. Current knowledge base, veterinary medicine, large animal. Synchronization level, high. Dominant thought patterns. Emergency intervention, gross anatomy, pragmatism. Dr. Vance. The CEO's voice cut through the fog, sharp with annoyance. Caleb, are you with us? We are grooming you as the future of this department. A complex case like this is exactly where we need fresh, innovative thinking. What's your take? If you were the primary surgeon, what approach would you take to mitigate the vascular risk? Every head in the room turned toward him. The eyes of his colleagues were a mixture of curiosity, encouragement, and cold assessment. A hot flush spread across Caleb's face. He scrambled to his feet, his mouth suddenly dry. His mind was a complete blank, save for the stampede of veterinary knowledge. The anatomy of a pig's abdominal cavity, the procedure for a bovine ruminotomy, the treatment for ovine intestinal blockage. The elegant vascular network of the human liver was being crudely overwritten by a diagram of something with fur and hooves. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Under the CEO's increasingly impatient glare, and in the suffocating silence of the room, a single, horrifyingly inappropriate phrase escaped his lips, completely against his will. A vaginal speculum. The words hung in the air. A what? The CEO asked, his brow furrowed in disbelief. A younger resident nearby let out a choked snort of laughter before quickly covering his mouth. A cold sweat drenched Caleb's shirt. He knew he'd said something catastrophic, but in his panic, his brain only scrambled the signals further. The system's veterinary data surged. He tried to backtrack, to salvage the situation. No, Mr. CEO, what I meant was, the location is deep. Exposure will be difficult. We'll need to achieve maximum dilation. Like with a breech calf. Patient. We need to fully expose the surgical field. Yes, exposure. He was rambling, digging his own grave. The moment breeched calf left his lips, the atmosphere in the room shifted from confusion to outright absurdity. Muffled chuckles rippled through the room. The senior professors exchanged looks of sheer disbelief. Dr. Miller's face was a mask of open contempt. Dr. Vance. The CEO's voice was now dangerously quiet, colder than ice. I think you're overworked. Your thinking is muddled. Sit down and listen to your seniors. Caleb collapsed back into his chair as if his bones had turned to jelly. He could feel the stares from every direction. Mocking, disappointed, questioning. They were like 1,000 tiny needles piercing his skin. The shame was suffocating. It was over. His reputation, the brilliant prodigy image he had so carefully cultivated, had just been shattered. It has to be Lucas. The thought was a venomous snake in his mind. His resignation, him hiding out in the country, playing vet. It's all a ploy to poison my system with this disgusting, filthy animal knowledge. He's trying to ruin me. He didn't hear another word of the meeting. His mind was consumed by a single, frantic thought. I have to find Lucas. Now, I have to make him come back. This has to stop. The moment the meeting was adjourned, Caleb bolted from the room, not even bothering to take off his white coat. Ignoring Amelia's worried calls, he sprinted to the parking garage, slammed his car into gear, and floored it, blindly following the GPS coordinates for a place called Red Creek. As the city skyline blurred past his window, a single thought screamed in his head. Lucas Thorne, you have to come back. Stop this right now. When Caleb's black sedan, a creature of the city entirely at odds with the dusty country road, skidded to a halt in the gravel driveway of the Red Creek Veterinary Clinic, I was in the middle of removing sutures from a Hereford that had tangled with a barbed wire fence. The shriek of tires and the spray of gravel startled the animals in the recovery pen. The Hereford flinched, nearly pulling me off balance. What in the Sam Hill? Uncle Jack's annoyed voice boomed from the pharmacy. I steadied myself and looked up, frowning. The car door flew open and Caleb stumbled out. His expensive suit was rumpled and dusty, his hair was a mess, and dark circles ringed his bloodshot eyes. He looked frantic, exhausted, and utterly unhinged, a pathetic ghost of the polished, confident prodigy from the hospital. He staggered into the open-air treatment area, the potent smell of livestock and manure making him instinctively recoil and cover his nose. His wild eyes scanned the area, passed over the nervous Hereford, and then locked onto me. Lucas! His voice was a hoarse, pleading croak that had lost all its manufactured charm. What? What are you doing in a place like this? Look at this, look what you're doing. He gestured wildly at the primitive setup, at the patches of manure on the dirt floor, at the faded, stained canvas apron I wore over my jeans. His tone was a bizarre mix of horror and accusation. I calmly continued cleaning my instruments, rinsing the suture removers under a stream of water from the tap. I didn't even look at him. It's exactly what it looks like, Caleb, I said, my voice flat. I'm a vet. I treat animals. It's interesting work. Interesting. His voice cracked, rising in pitch and startling a nearby donkey into a loud bray. Lucas Thorne, you're one of the best surgeons in the country. Your hands were made for a scalpel, for saving human lives, not for pulling calves out of cows and stitching up livestock. He was flailing his arms now, practically spitting with rage. You're wasting your talent. This is a criminal waste. Criminal? I finally looked up, my eyes meeting his. A small, humorless smile touched my lips. Last I checked, there's no law against a surgeon becoming a vet. I like it here. The air is clean, the work is honest, and the patients don't sue you. They just get better. Caleb was speechless, his face turning a blotchy red. He stared into my calm, detached eyes. Eyes that held no anger, no resentment, only a profound and chilling indifference. The sight seemed to terrify him more than anything else. I could practically feel his panic as the system in his head continued its relentless, unwanted synchronization, downloading the sights, sounds, and knowledge of my current, unclean reality. Normal bovine temperature, common ovine parasites, boar castration techniques. Lucas, I'm begging you. He took a step forward, his voice trembling with desperation. He lowered his head, adopting a posture of utter subservience. I know we had our misunderstandings. I wasn't a good enough mentee. I disappointed you. I am so sorry. It was all my fault. His eyes were actually red-rimmed, glistening with unshed tears. But you can't throw your life away out of spite. The hospital needs you. Patients need you. Amelia. She's worried sick about you. She talks about you every day. Please come back. I'll do anything, just please come back. He started to sink, his knees buckling, as if he was actually going to kneel right there in the dirt. I watched his pathetic performance, my mind a frozen lake. The sneering face of the dying thug, the cold paper of my termination letter, the image of Amelia walking away on Caleb's arm. None of it had faded. Sorry. Worried. The words were meaningless. You should go, I said, my voice as cold and clear as the well water I was now using to fill a large bucket. This clinic is too small for a big shot like you. My life, my choices. Don't waste your breath. The water slopped over the side, splashing onto the dusty ground. Caleb stared at me, his expression shifting from pleading to desperation, and finally, to a venomous resentment born of total humiliation. His lips trembled, but before he could spit out whatever threat was forming in his mind, he caught sight of my Uncle Jack standing in the doorway of the pharmacy, holding a tire iron and looking at him like he was something scraped off the bottom of a boot. He said nothing. He just turned, a broken, defeated thing, and stumbled back to his car. The door slammed shut with a bang. The engine roared to life, and the black sedan tore out of the driveway in a cloud of dust and failure, disappearing down the country road. The clinic was quiet again, save for the soft snuffling of the animals. Uncle Jack spat on the ground. Good riddance. Fellow looked like he had a snake in his gut. Stay clear of that kind, son. I set the bucket down, watching the water soak into the dry earth, and quietly replied, I will, Uncle Jack. I will. News of Caleb's failed pilgrimage reached me, as I knew it would, through Amelia. Her voice on the phone was a tangled mess of confusion, resentment, and a strange, wounded pride. Lucas, what is wrong with you? Caleb went all that way to beg you to come back. Do you have any idea how devastated he was? What did he ever do to you that you'd humiliate him like that? The hospital invested years in you, and you just walk away to become some farmhand. Is this how you repay everyone who believed in you? Her questions were like machine gun fire. I held the phone to my ear, listening to the familiar voice that now sounded so alien. All I could see was the surgical sponge in my mind's eye, and her silent, downcast face at the hearing. Amelia, I said, cutting through her tirade, my voice perfectly level. I don't owe anyone an explanation for my choices. And as for Caleb, I paused, letting a hint of ice enter my tone. He begs, and I'm supposed to come running? Is that how it works? You're so worried about him, you go comfort him. Don't call me again with this nonsense. Lucas Thorne, you are an absolute bastard, she shrieked, her voice tight with the fury of someone whose true feelings have been exposed. You are completely unreasonable. You'll regret this. You just wait. The line went dead. I put the phone away, my expression unchanged. Regret? I'd learned the true meaning of that word in my last life. This time, my only regret was not seeing them for what they were sooner. Life in the country flowed on, simple and full. I even started a TikTok account under the handle Doc Thorne's Country Practice. I posted short clips of my daily routine, delivering a breech calf with calm, steady hands, castrating a feisty boar with a speed and precision that filled the comments with fire emojis and stunned praise, performing an emergency abdominal surgery on a goat that had eaten a plastic bag, my focused skill in the primitive conditions earning me a chorus of "Dude's a legend" from viewers. The contrast was the appeal, the gritty, authentic reality of rural veterinary work, performed by someone with the unmistakable hands of a world-class surgeon. My channel blew up. The comment section was my new community, a place of good-natured humor, a genuine appreciation. Doc's hands are so fast, you can tell he's single LOL. Is Doc Thorne taking applications for apprentices? I can hold a camera and say wow a lot. Watching him geld that boar was weirdly satisfying. Should I be worried? This is real skill, not like those flashy surgeons in the city. Bonus, your patients can't sue you for malpractice. Living the dream, Doc. Sometimes I turn the camera on myself and grin, my teeth white against my suntanned skin. This grounded sense of accomplishment, this simple connection with people and animals, was something the celebrated Dr. Lucas Thorne had never known. 7 downtown Chicago. In the hushed, carpeted corridor of Metropolitan General's VIP wing, the air smelled of antiseptic and money. Caleb followed Amelia into a spacious private suite. He had plastered his trademark humble, reassuring smile onto his face, but a deep, anxious exhaustion lurked in his eyes. Propped up in the hospital bed was a man in his 50s, wearing silk pajamas. His face was pale, but his eyes were sharp, radiating an aura of absolute authority. This was Roman Sterling, CEO of Sterling Holdings, a man who had clawed his way from the city's roughest neighborhoods to the top of its corporate ladder, with a reputation for being ruthless in both arenas. He had been admitted for acute cholecystitis, a severe gallbladder infection with an impacted stone. The surgery itself, a cholecystectomy, was routine, but the patient was not. "Mr. Sterling, feeling any better?" Amelia's voice was warm and professional. "This is Dr. Caleb Vance, one of our most gifted young surgeons. He'll be leading your procedure." Caleb stepped forward, bowing his head slightly. "Mr. Sterling, it's an honor. Please, don't worry about a thing. A cholecystectomy is a very standard procedure, and you're in the best possible hands." His voice was a soothing balm of confidence. Sterling's sharp eyes assessed Caleb for a long moment, then flickered to his name badge. He gave a curt nod. "Dr. Reed will be assisting, correct? I trust this hospital. Get it done. I want it clean, and I want it fast." "Absolutely," they said in unison. The day of the surgery arrived. Under the glare of the Aura lights, Roman Sterling lay peacefully on the table, his abdomen prepped and draped. The anesthesiologist gave a thumbs up. Caleb took a deep breath, exchanging a confident glance with Amelia. He took the scalpel. The incision was clean and practiced. Amelia was a perfect assistant, anticipating his every need, managing bleeding, and keeping the field clear. Everything was going by the book. He retracted the liver, exposing the inflamed, angry-looking gallbladder. He carefully began to dissect the crucial anatomical landmark, the triangle of Calais, where the cystic duct and artery are located. This was his chance to prove himself, to erase the humiliation of the breached calf incident. But just as his forceps were about to grasp the cystic duct, a violent, overwhelming wave of information slammed into his brain. It was a high-voltage shock of pure, unfiltered data, not human anatomy. It was the anatomy of a large boar prepped for castration. The bulging, heavy scrotum, the testicles that needed to be located, isolated, and removed. The system's notification was cold and absolute. Target subject, Lucas Thorne, is currently engaged in high-focus procedure. Porcine castration, gelding. Key techniques, spermatic cord isolation, rapid hemostasis. Synchronizing user thought patterns. "No!" Caleb screamed internally. He fought to pull his focus back to the human gallbladder in front of him, but the system's control was absolute. The veterinary knowledge flooded his consciousness, overriding everything else. His eyes saw a gallbladder, but his brain and his hands registered the anatomy of a pig. His movements became subtly wrong. The way he held the forceps, the probing motion of his fingers, it mimicked the technique for isolating the spermatic cord. The slight hesitation was enough to make Amelia frown. "Caleb, the triangle is here," she whispered, tapping the correct spot with her own instrument, a hint of tension in her voice. The reminder snapped him back, but only for a moment. He managed to ligate and divide the duct and artery. The gallbladder came free. The worst seemed to be over. Amelia visibly relaxed. As they prepared to close, Caleb's eyes drifted down the patient's draped body. And in that instant, the system struck again with the force of a tidal wave. Porcine castration, final step, scrotal incision, testicular extrusion, cord severance. High-fidelity action, synchronization engaged. Caleb's pupils contracted to pinpricks. His mind went blank. His body was no longer his own. Before him was not a human abdomen, but the scrotum of a prize hog. A bizarre, overpowering sense of surgical purpose, a horrifying muscle memory, took control of his arms. Hemostat. Caleb's voice was sharp, a clip command he didn't recognize as his own. Confused but conditioned to obey, Amelia slapped a Kelly clamp into his hand. In a horrifyingly fluid motion that no one could have anticipated, Caleb's left hand shot out. He grabbed the patient's groin through the sterile drape, his fingers expertly isolating a target, mimicking the act of pushing a testicle into position for incision. His right hand, holding the steel hemostat, moved with the vicious, practiced precision of a master butcher. With a sickening snap, he brought the clamp down hard. A horror gagging. A scream of such primal, soul-shattering agony ripped from Roman Sterling's throat that it seemed to shake the very foundations of the room. His body, which should have been inert under deep anesthesia, arched violently off the table, convulsing in pure, unadulterated torment. The or was plunged into a horrified, deafening silence. Amelia's needle driver clattered to the floor. Her mouth hung open, her eyes wide with sheer, uncomprehending terror as she stared at Caleb, then at the convulsing patient. The anesthesiologist, his face as white as a sheet, fumbled with his monitors. Impossible. He's under deep. He shouldn't feel anything. A nurse screamed. Caleb stood frozen, his hands still holding the clamp. The cold steel, the unnatural texture of what it had crushed. The sensations finally broke through the system's control. He looked down at his own hand, then at the draped area where the clamp was still latched on, and the full, world-ending gravity of his action crashed down upon him. He had just castrated Roman Sterling. The hemostat slipped from his numb fingers, hitting the floor with a loud, metallic clang that sounded exactly like a guillotine. The cold iron bars of the cell were the first thing Amelia saw when she woke up, and the last thing she saw before she fell into a fitful, nightmare-plagued sleep. Medical malpractice. Aiding and abetting aggravated assault. Sentence: 1 year, state penitentiary. The words were a brand on her soul. Her medical license was revoked. Her career, her future, her entire identity gone. The fall from grace was a chasm, and she was at the bottom. Days were spent in mind-numbing labor, her hands, once skilled enough for delicate surgery, now raw from menial tasks. Nights were spent reliving the horror. Caleb's eyes, possessed by that alien purpose. The shockingly fast, brutal motion of his arm. The sickening crunch of the hemostat. Roman Sterling's inhuman scream. The crimson stains spreading rapidly on the sterile blue drape. Art. Amelia would press her hands to her ears, her body shaking, a cold sweat soaking her rough prison uniform. Stop thinking about it. But she couldn't. At the malpractice hearing, faced with the undeniable video evidence and the full, terrifying wrath of the Sterling family, Caleb had completely fallen apart. He had wept, babbled, and pointed his finger squarely at her. She was the senior surgeon in the room. She should have stopped me. Her presence must have confused me. I was under too much pressure. Amelia, I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. I think I blacked out. You have to help me. I can't go to prison. His tear-streaked face, once so appealing, now haunted her as the face of a monster. Hatred, thick and suffocating, coiled around her heart. She hated Caleb for his cowardice, his selfishness, his utter depravity. But she hated herself more. She hated herself for being so blind, for falling for his lies and his carefully constructed illusion of genius. She had pushed away the one person who had truly loved her, who had real, honest talent, all for a pathetic, manipulative fraud. Lucas. The name was a physical pain. A wave of regret, so powerful it took her breath away, crashed over her. She remembered their late nights studying in the medical school library, the brilliant light in his eyes after his first solo surgery, the way he'd promised to build her a surgical simulation lab in their future home. Warm, real memories, now reduced to ash by the inferno of her catastrophic mistake. It was too late. All of it was too late. She had traded a diamond for a shard of glass, and now she was paying the price in a cold, dark cell. Lucas, I'm so sorry. She would whisper into her thin pillow, her muffled sobs lost in the silence of the prison night. 1 year, 365 days of torment. In the crucible of regret and hatred, Amelia's despair burned away, leaving something hard and cold in its place. The only thing that kept her going was a single, all-consuming thought. Get out, find Caleb, and burn his world to the ground. 1 year later, the heavy prison gate slammed shut behind her, the sound of final, metallic punctuation mark on a year of her life. The bright sun made her flinch. Dressed in worn-out clothes, carrying a small bag with her few possessions, Amelia Reed stood on the edge of the city, a ghost in the daylight. Prison had stripped the softness from her face, leaving behind a gaunt, hollow-eyed woman with a dangerous stillness about her. Freedom meant nothing. The world was gray, and the only color she saw was the red of her rage. She didn't go home. She didn't call friends or family. Shame was a cloak she wore constantly. She vanished into the city's underbelly, taking a windowless room in a run-down boarding house and picking up cash-in-hand jobs, washing dishes, hauling trash, anything to survive. And to fund her search, Caleb had disappeared, vanished, as if he'd never existed. Sterling's revenge was a shadow that hung over the city, and Caleb was running from it. But Amelia was patient. Hatred was a powerful motivator. She found the first thread in a greasy spoon diner, her hands submerged in lukewarm, soapy water. Two truck drivers were talking. "You hear about that new guy at the scrapyard out west? Real weirdo. Walks with a bad limp, always had a hat pulled down over his face. Asked him to help me with a fridge, and he nearly bit my head off." The gimp? The one who walks like he's protecting his family jewels? The other one chuckled. "Heard he got into it with the wrong people. Total mess." "Yeah, that's him. Name's Chris or something. Lives out there like a rat." "Limp? Protecting his jewels? Name starts with C." Amelia's hand stopped moving. The water ran over her cold, still fingers. A jolt went through her body. She slowly lifted her head, her face a blank mask. But deep in her eyes, the embers of her hatred roared into a white-hot flame. The scrapyard on the city's industrial fringe was a wasteland of rusting metal and decay. Hidden behind the skeletal remains of a burnt-out car, Amelia watched. It was him. He was dressed in filthy work clothes, a grimy baseball cap pulled low, but she knew him instantly. His body was stooped, his posture broken. He moved with a shuffling, agonizing limp, dragging his left leg. She watched as he struggled to lift a heavy engine block, his face contorted in pain. A cold, vicious satisfaction filled her. Roman Sterling might not have found him, but his foot soldiers clearly had. She watched him for 2 days, a predator studying its prey. She saw him retreat at night to a makeshift home in a rusting shipping container. She saw him eat cheap, canned food, a man living in a permanent state of pain and fear. On the third night, a cold rain began to fall. As Caleb limped back to his container, fumbling with a rusty padlock, a voice emerged from the darkness behind him. "Caleb." He froze, his body going rigid. Slowly, terrified, he turned. Amelia stood in the rain, a wraith in black. Her wet hair was plastered to her pale face, and her eyes burned with an unholy light. "Hey, Amelia." His voice was a choked, terrified whisper. How'd you find me? You're out." She didn't answer. She just walked toward him, her steps slow and deliberate. "Why?" she asked, her voice a dead, rasping sound. "Why did you throw me to the wolves?" Inside the cramped, foul-smelling shipping container, a single bare bulb flickered overhead, casting dancing, monstrous shadows on the corrugated steel walls. Caleb huddled on a makeshift bed, trembling. "Amelia, I'm sorry. I swear I'm sorry," he sobbed, his face a pathetic mask of fear. I couldn't control it. It wasn't my fault. It was—" He stopped, a wild, cornered look in his eyes. "It was what?" Amelia's voice was like chipping ice. "Tell me." "It was the system," he screamed, the words tumbling out in a torrent of madness and confession. "A prodigy surgeon system. It latched onto me, but it needed a host to draw knowledge from. I chose Lucas. It copied his skills, his thoughts. That's how I got so good. I was going to be the greatest surgeon alive, but he ruined it." His voice turned venomous. "He must have figured it out. That's why he ran away to become a damn vet. He started poisoning the system with all that. That filth, animal medicine. When I was operating on Sterling, my head was full of it. Castrating pigs. The system made me do it. Amelia. It took over. I couldn't stop it. It was Lucas. Lucas destroyed me. He destroyed us both." The insane, impossible truth slammed into Amelia. All of it. A lie. A theft. He had used her, used Lucas, used everyone. She was just a pawn in his parasitic climb to glory. The sheer, soul-crushing absurdity of it all washed over her. A low, guttural laugh escaped her lips. It grew louder, more hysterical, a sound of pure, broken madness that echoed in a metal box. "A system. Lucas. Destroyed us. Ha, 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 ha." She laughed until tears streamed down her face, cold tears of utter despair. Then the laughter stopped. She straightened up, her face wiped clean of all emotion. A dead, terrifying calm settled over her. The last spark of light in her eyes went out, leaving only a black, bottomless void. "Then let's go to hell together, Caleb," she whispered. His face froze in terror. "No. Amelia, what are you doing?" "No." She lunged for a corner of the container where several plastic gas cans, salvaged for scrap, were stored. She wrenched the cap off one, and the overpowering stench of gasoline filled the air. "No, you're crazy. Stay away from me," he shrieked, trying to scramble away on his shattered leg. But it was too late. Cold, sloshing gasoline drenched her, the fumes instantly intoxicating. Her face was serene, almost beatific. She pulled a cheap lighter from her pocket. Flick! A tiny flame danced in the darkness. Caleb's eyes were wide with the finality of his terror. A strange, peaceful smile touched Amelia's lips. She let the lighter fall. A few days later, a plain cardboard box with no return address showed up at the Red Creek Clinic. My name was scrawled on it. I was in the back pen, checking the foredrip for a ewe that had needed a C-section. Uncle Jack brought the box out. "For you, son. From a city. Any idea who?" I glanced at the box, then went back to soothing the ewe, which leaned into my touch. "Don't know," I said, my voice even. "Toss it in the burn barrel." Uncle Jack grunted. "Suit yourself." He took the box to the barrel where we burned trash and medical waste. A few moments later, I heard the crackle of fire, the sound of cardboard catching flame. For a brief second, I thought I smelled the faint, lingering scent of cheap perfume on the breeze, but then it was gone. I stood up and went to the sink, the cool well water washing away the grime and the smell of antiseptic. The sun streamed through the gaps in the lean-to roof, glinting off the water. From the front yard, I heard the rumble of a tractor in Mr. Hemlock's booming voice. "Doc Thorne, you in there? My hogs are off their feet again. Think it's time for another round of dewormer?" "Coming," I called back, drying my hands on my jeans. A genuine smile spread across my face. I walked out into the bright, warm sunlight and pulled out my phone, opening the TikTok app. My account, Doc Thorne's Country Practice, was flooded with notifications. The latest video, the wobbly first steps of the calf I delivered, had thousands of views. The comments were a stream of warmth and goofy humor. I smiled, shook my head, and hit the go live button. The camera focused on a few lambs basking in the sun. "Hey y'all, afternoon," I said, my voice relaxed and cheerful. "Just finished up with a C-section. Mr. Hemlock's pigs are feeling a little under the weather, so I'm heading over there next. Thought while I had a minute, we could talk about summer parasite control. Now, the dosage for a pig is way different than for a cow, and if you get it wrong, you're going to have a real bad day." In the frame, I was just a man in a faded work shirt, standing in a dusty yard, surrounded by animals and the rolling green hills of West Virginia. The sun was warm, the breeze was cool. No schemes, no stolen glory, no betrayal, just the hard, satisfying work of healing and the simple, honest trust of the creatures in my care. I adjusted the camera, watching the friendly comments scroll by. Now, when you're dosing a cow, you gotta be quick, or you'll end up wearing more of it than they swallow. The live stream was full of laughter and light. This was my life now. Real, grounded, and entirely my own.